Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How's everyone? Thank you so much for joining us. This is the Sole Purpose Show, seen every Saturday right here on In Touch News Internet Radio, where everybody is a star. And you can also see these rebroadcasts that we have a Facebook page
and a YouTube
page. We're just trying to make sure that you guys have some good content to carry you through the week.
That's the goal.
That's the goal. I'm your host, Keith, and of course, we are here with the star of our show.
I'm not the star. I'm just a co-host, but I am Monica.
We ended last month on kind of a low note, right?
Yes.
Because although there were some highs during the month of June, but we, our thoughts and prayers really go out to the victims of the horrible building collapse down in South Florida. At this point, we're hoping for miracles, but we also have to be, realistic about this is Florida heat.
Yes, and it's been raining.
And the Florida thunderstorms. Yeah. And those things just don't make for, a good chance of a lot of survivors. So we just want to keep them in our...
Absolutely. I don't know if... I don't know how many people they've recovered thus far.
I think the death toll as of this recording is 20.
Oh, wow.
And still 140 people, I think, or so that are unaccounted for.
Well, I think the bright spot in that situation is, if there can be a bright spot, is that President Biden and his wife went down this week, maybe 2 days ago. And you saw how government should work, the federal government, along with the state government, along with the local government, all working together to address an issue, partisanship notwithstanding, there was no issue. There's no partisanship involved. So it was good to see those photographs. I chuckled because it appeared that Senator Rubio had a scowl upon his face, as President Biden, as did our governor, had a scowl upon their faces as Biden was addressing the first responders. But that just could have been me filled with disdain for both of them.
Well,
but you're correct. Prayers go out for sure.
Yes.
Not to make that a political, because it shouldn't be political, but I just thought that was an interesting observation I made.
Yeah. All right. So what month is it?
So it's July 3rd. July 3rd. And
it's 4th of July weekend.
Yes, it is. July 3rd and 4th of July weekend. And fireworks typically are what happens on 4th of July.
Y'all be safe.
And there were fireworks this week in the news. So probably it's very fitting.
Oh my gosh.
So the first little bit of news that there was lots of it.
It was lots of it.
But the one that I found most interesting and perhaps humorous is that an indictment was filed against the Trump Organization and the Trump Organization CFO, and his name is find it in a second. Wow, I'll tell you in a second. Got to pull it up. It is Weisselberg. So it was a 15-count indictment.
Hold on now, but before you give all the explanations, we're just giving you a little.
You were giving. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
We're going to preview all of the things that we're going to be talking about today.
All right.
So the cool part about this show, because we keep things light and interesting. We give you things that of interest. We make you aware of things.
You're correct.
But we also give you, especially with these complex legal issues, we have the benefit of having our own in-house attorney on the show who breaks things down and gives you the real explanation.
Okay, so yes, so I apologize. I was very excited about the indictment, so I jumped too quickly into that conversation.
You get your chance.
Thank you very much. So
what else?
So the Trump Organization, the indictment. Mm-hmm. We also had William Cosby, Dr. William Cosby. His conviction was overturned, so he now is at home, probably asleep, irritating the heck out of Camille. Mm-hmm. And then we had this was this morning, I think, or yesterday. I'm going to mispronounce the baby's name. Sha'Carri Richardson,
yes.
With the Olympics, and she tested positive for THC or whatever the drug is in marijuana.
THC is the substance that's in marijuana, and she actually tested positive during the trials, which she shined, and certainly was in the anchor position on the track team, Olympic track team. So I think we should probably start out by talking about that. So the implications of her positive test are she gets suspended, correct?
For 30 days. Mm-hmm.
Suspended for 30 days, which essentially knocks her out of the really the first couple of events I think that she would have participated in.
I think her 100 race was within that 30 days.
Within that 30 days. So essentially, what we have is assuming she's allowed to resume and rejoin the team, she will miss probably the highlight race of the Olympics, which is the 100 meters.
Right. So I have lots of thoughts on this. I actually blasted somebody today on various social media accounts, but specifically on Clubhouse, because a lot of the commentary has been, well, she knew what the rules were, and she broke the rules, and this is a consequence. It just kind of really, it is what it is type pushback. And then I read an article that explained why Sha'Carri, there's never been any history, as far as I know, there's never been any never any comments or history or conversation about her being this, weed smoker, right? And if she dabbles, there's plenty of athletes that smoke weed. So there's never been any conversation about her being a weed smoker. If you remember last week, I think it was last week, talked about my concern and my aggravation with people criticizing her because of the way she presented herself with the orange, blue hair, long nails, tattoos, whatever, which I'm fine with. But there was an article that came out. Well, she was interviewed this morning on the Today Show, which I did not see, but I saw read some of the transcript. But then there's an article that came out, and she explained that during the trial. So let's back up for a second. Marijuana is legal in Oregon, which is where the trials were.
I understand.
But she was approached by a reporter during the trials out in Portland. And this reporter told her, he's the person that told her that her biological mom had died. She was unaware. So in the midst of trials for the Olympics, this reporter thought it was appropriate because, reporters just have to get the best story and got to get the reaction, right. Told her that her mom died. It's kind of like her finding out her mom died on Facebook. And so she herself said that it was triggering, and I'm gonna get the exact phrasing that she gave, because this is what set me off. When she explained how she felt when she heard it, she said she learned about the death from a reporter during an interview and called it triggering and definitely nerve shocking. So that's how she felt upon hearing that her birth mother had died. And then she says that's why she's not making excuses. She admitted that she did it. She said that's why she smoked. And then she went out after she smoked. Not, I don't know if it was directly or the day after or when the time sequence, but it was all during the period she was in Portland. And then she went out, won the 100-meter final, ran a 10.86. So first of all, I like to share that if you run the 10.86 with weed in your system, you're a bad chick. What would she have run had there been no weed in her system? But anyway, so just real quick. So I was irritated with folks who are not, my interpretation is not showing her grace, considering the reasons why. There's no heat coming for the reporter. All the heat is coming for Sha'Carri, and she's admitted that she admitted that she was wrong. She's taking responsibility for her actions, and she's understanding the consequences. But no one's saying anything about this reporter who told her in the midst of trials that her mama died. There's no heat for him. And to me, he's the reason why she's in the situation.
Okay, so I can't necessarily go there with you,
that's fine.
But I will say this: I am very torn on this one because you know me, I'm all about personal responsibility and accountability. And
you're a Republican.
And I'm not a Republican. The rules are the rules, and I am a career HR person. Following the rules is kind of what we do. So, but I am torn, and the reason why is because no, I don't go for the blame is actually some reporter who made you go out and go get some weed.
That's not what I said.
And smoke weed. But at the same time, we're in a changing society where no matter how you feel, your personal feelings about marijuana, the tide is changing. Like it's at some point, eventually, all states will probably adopt legalized recreational use of marijuana. So I'm torn because number one, wait a minute, just one. Not only is the tide changing, and at some point we're probably this will be a nothing kind of issue. But the other reason is, I think you started to allude to, marijuana is not a performance enhancing drug.
It's not.
When you're trying to run a race,
It's not.
It is just the opposite. Technically, because I'm a doctor. Technically, it is a depressant. Like it's not designed to stimulate. It's not a stimulant. It is a depressant. So if anything, it will slow your reactions. It will slow your ability to do things. If it is prevalent in your system. So to take the position that she should be disqualified from participating because of that particular drug is, I don't know.
Well, so we disagree, obviously. So there's nothing wrong with personal accountability. She's taking accountability for her actions. My issue is that there's a but for analysis, and I'm the lawyer, so the but for in this process, in this situation, but for, because this is what she says. She doesn't say it this way, but for, I can only deduce this from what she said. But for that reporter telling her during the trials that her mama died, she would not have engaged, period. That's what she says.
I understand.
That's what she says. And so if he's the but for cause for it, she ultimately is going to have to pay the consequence, obviously, because she is, and she's the person that's running in the race, and she's the one that gets drug tested, etc. But for that man or woman sharing that information with her, which was inappropriate, she would not have engaged. And so my concern and issue is all of us not embracing that young lady and providing her covering and focusing our angst and anger and irritation at the reporter who did that to her. The reporter did that. She's 21 years old. How many of us made really bad decisions at 21?
So I mean,
lots of us made bad decisions at 21.
Bad decisions.
Correct. And God forbid that you made a bad decision and that impacted your ability to do something that you really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, and I did. And that's why I say, at the end of the day, because I know we need to close this out, because we need to get to, I want to get to whether or not Trump is going to jail. But at the end of the day, she's going to recover from this. The mistakes that we made at 21, we recovered from them. It took a while. Sometimes we got knocked back. We got kind of sidetracked. But that's one of those ages where, as long as you're allowed to continue to live and learn, she will recover. Now, people are probably already saying, "Hey, she's 21, so 4 years from now she'll be 25, 26. She will still be young enough to compete in the Olympics."
And I think that's kind of where she probably is. But the fact remains that, number one, I don't see more. I'm disappointed that more of us are not providing her grace. It's kind of like, well, you can't do what the white folks do, da 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 da, and just making an assumption because this girl got red, orange hair and long nails, and she's just a weed smoker, not having a full appreciation for the entire story. When in fact, the reason that she did it was to numb herself, because she learned that her mom died. Yeah. She learned her mom died, and then had to go run probably in the biggest race that she's ever, arguably the biggest race that she's ever run. And had to do that. So so at any rate, so I was irritated with people today, extremely irritated. I went live on my personal Facebook page because some of y'all are just, I won't say raggedy, but some of y'all real judgy. And I'm disappointed, but that's par for the course, because I tend to be disappointed with us very often. And I just wish that we would show this young lady much more grace. My prayers are with her. I am rooting for you. I am not watching the Olympics. And if you know me, you know how disappointed I am in that, because not only with Sha'Carri, but then the ban with the whole, the swimming caps that assist with natural hair, they're banning that and banning Black Lives Matter. The Olympics is real anti-Black right now, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not going to watch it. So God bless those who do. I will not be watching it. I feel bad. I pray for all the Black athletes that are going over there to participate in the Olympics. It will not be on my television. At least I will not be tuning in.
Well, I'll tell you what I will be tuning into. Is your former president going to prison? Because that's what I'm seeing. What? So what now? What exactly happened now? His CFO of the Trump organization surrendered himself to federal authorities.
Yes,
because he's going to prison.
Well, I don't know about all that. So there's a 15-count indictment filed in the District Court of New York. Let me see. Let's see who filed it. It was filed in state court in New York. And the indictment was filed against the Trump organization, in addition to the chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg. And I was trying to pull up the indictment, but I wasn't able to find it. But Essentially, it says that they both engaged in blatant tax evasion for more than a decade, for more than 15 years. For 15 years. And so one of the things that it talks about is for Weisselberg, what they did, which is this is bold. They paid roughly $100,000 a year in rent for him, paid utility bills and garage expenses for an apartment, and they started that in 2005. And they did not report these payments as compensation. So he's an employee providing all these fringe benefits, and as you know, you provide fringe benefits to an employee. That's essentially that's essentially income, and it should be taxed on both sides. The employer should do taxes, and the employee should file it as taxable income. Neither one of them did it, and I think Weisselberg's like $900,000 in taxes that he didn't pay as a consequence of that. And so I think there were other people too. They both pled not guilty, so we will see what happens. I think the strategy is for the DA in New York and for the Attorney General, because I think the Attorney General joined in on this. She's also assisting with this, but I believe the strategy is because I think they tried to get Weisselberg to testify against Trump before. Remember this whole thing about they're not going to release the tax records because he's under audit. And then finally they got them. And I think as they dug through them, this is kind of what they were able to put together. My belief is that there are more things to come. And this is just the start, it's the bottom of the iceberg, not the tip. And so I think that they're going to use this as leverage to try to encourage Weisselberg to flip on Trump.
Oh, I'm certain.
Yeah, so we will see if he does, because he wasn't willing to testify. He's pled not guilty, so we'll see how bad he is once they tell him how much time he's looking at. So whether is he going to jail, I don't know. I think that if they're convicted, if the organization itself is convicted, presumably lots of the loan they will have defaulted or be in breach of lots of their loans, and we'll see what happens with the banks that they have these mini loans with. And they will be in default. They will have no money. They'll be broke. And then we'll see what happens with all the children and Trump.
What's sad is they will still have money. Because let me tell you why. No. Because they're debt.
They have tons of debt.
They have tons of debt, and he operates in tons of debt.
You don't know, he has no assets.
He has no assets. He's a con artist. But what he has the ability to do though is still message out. And I get some of the emails saying, here's what's going on in the country. This is a witch hunt, and we need your help to try to fight against the radical left and whatever. And people are still pouring just millions and millions of dollars into these coffers for phony purposes, but which are essentially to help shield him from his legal fees. Essentially is where it's going. So it's a shame. Look, I don't make any bones about the fact that I think that this was the greatest con job in the history of this country, and it's hopefully at some point it just catches up. It just catches up to us.
Well, I think the other part is I don't know. The question that you asked at the very beginning is whether or not Trump is going to jail, and so I don't know the answer to that question. My thought would be probably I don't know. It says that he's a former sitting president. Just regardless of how despicable he is. He's a former sitting president, and no other former sitting president has been sent to jail, even though they've been deserving of it, right? So, Nixon was impeached. He was impeached, and he could have gone to jail, but then Gerald Ford pardoned him. Thank you. So I don't know if he will. I think if he is found that he committed a crime, right now he's a regular citizen, I think that he absolutely should be charged. The question will be whether or not Biden will pardon him. And I don't think Biden doesn't have the power to pardon him for state crimes. And this is a state crime. So this may be one of the reasons why they're going this route. So Biden is not put in that situation. So if they decide to charge him once they continue their investigation, because one of the things they said was that when the indictment was made public, that this is just the beginning. The investigation is kind of ongoing. And so in the midst of their investigation, if they uncover other information that warrants an indictment against Trump individually, Biden can't pardon him because it's a state crime.
I think the whole Biden is going to pardon Trump if he had the ability to. This man was a bridge too far, not just for separating and creating even deeper partisanship than already existed.
Mhm.
But he's also a bridge too far in his lack of respect for the democracy that we hold dear. So I don't know that I would. I think President Biden is too much of a true patriot, if you will, which is I know is a kind of a misused term nowadays. But to allow history to record that he was the one that allowed this man to continue to destroy our democracy when he had an opportunity just to kind of let the law just do what the law does, which is hopefully find justice in the end.
Well, we shall see if there are federal crimes that he is charged with, because right now, as I said, these are state crimes. We'll see what happens. It sets a bad precedent, though.
It does.
I mean, Trump set bad precedent, but it sets a bad precedent to have a former president be indicted and arrested and thrown in. Indicted, no. Arrested, possibly, because that's never happened before, but definitely to be convicted
toted
and
off in an orange jumpsuit.
Listen, I would love to see
handcuffs.
it. Look, you ain't gonna tell me twice. I would love to see it, but the reality of the situation is that it probably will not happen.
So, all right, so we got a couple minutes before we go to break, but I think we need to set up the other blockbuster story that happened this week to kick off the month of July, and that is the release from prison of Dr. William H. Cosby. So he served
2 years.
2 years. So he served less than 3 years all total for sexual assault. He was actually tried and convicted of sexual assault, correct?
Yes.
And then what happened?
The Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned his conviction and they released him.
And why did the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania overturn his conviction?
Oh, it's a very long explanation, but I know just real quick. They overturned his conviction because they said that he never should have been prosecuted. Essentially, it was a violation of his due process for them to have prosecuted him in light of an agreement that he reached with the prior DA. So that's in sum. We can talk more about that on the other end, but in sum, that was the decision. The decision was 79 pages, and I read all of it.
Yes, you did.
But that, in sum, was the reason why his conviction was overturned.
So I think that, and we're going to set the stage really for the rest of our discussion, which hopefully you will find enlightening, is we're going to examine the actual guilt or innocence of Dr. Cosby in light of these facts, because as I understand it, legally, if his conviction has been vacated, overturned means that he technically is innocent.
Yes.
Legally.
It's like nothing happened.
Right. So what we're going to do on the other side.
Oh, it's vacated. You're right. The wording. I don't do criminal law, but it's vacated. You're not always right. But it was vacated.
Right. So what we're going to do on the other side is we're going to get into all kinds of issues around his actual guilt or innocence, because at the end of the day, something happened. We know something happened. We know that he knew these women. We know that he had some relationship with these women. Generally speaking, we know that they had some interaction with him. But what we don't know is we weren't physically there. Well, I guess in some cases we kind of actually do know, because
he testified
because of what he testified. But there's some nuances to it. So we're going to jump into that. This has been a very divisive,
very much so,
issue, especially amongst the Black community, because a lot of us see Bill Cosby as an iconic.
It's Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable.
Dr. Heathcliff Huxtable. So he really changed. The man really changed the face of television, network television as we know it. And so we're gonna get into that a little bit as well. But for now, we're gonna take a brief break.
We are.
And we'll come back. We're gonna talk about Dr. Bill Cosby.
I'm happy that you don't get paid for impressions. We'll be back. All right, we're back.
We are back. Thank you for tuning in to the Soul Purpose Show. So today we have a very interesting set of subjects. We're talking about Bill Cosby, Dr. William H. Cosby. You know, he's an actual ED.
Yes.
He's actually ED. So he's Dr. Cosby, not Dr. Huxtable, but Dr. Cosby. And yes, the man probably did change the face of network television as we know. He's a beloved character who just really did some really sucky
stuff. It was bad. I mean, listen, look, I will be the first person to admit it, and this is the lawyer part of Monica. If y'all hear our dog in the background, it's just we can't do nothing about it. Y'all just kind of hear the background noise, so we just apologize. So and it irritates my husband, but I can't do nothing about it. So I will be the first to admit that when the allegations first came out, and this is my lawyer hat, I am trained, even if I believe, like Monica, the layperson, believes that someone engaged in some behaviors, right? I'm trained to look at all of the facts before making a decision. Mm-hmm. I don't always do that, but in particular with crime, I really try very hard to do it. More specifically when we are involved, right? And I will just put out there, and I've shared this publicly, so it's not a secret. I am a rape survivor, so I'm a little more sensitive with these particular topics. So I'll be the first person to admit, and I got a backlash on social media a couple years ago when this first came out, because I was like, I need all the information. Some of these issues, some of these allegations are very old. They never reported them for whatever the reasons. Some of the information was coming out. There was some inconsistencies in their statements. Some of these people willingly took the drugs, presumably because we don't know all the information. His side is that they took them to engage in sex. Their side is no, they took them, but they didn't want to engage in sex. And so there's a lot of, there's two sides to the story. Everybody doesn't feel that way. I recognize that. I'll probably get some backlash from that, but that's where I was several years ago, just because that's what I'm trained to do. I'm supposed to look at both sides before and trying to get as many facts as I can before making a decision. Everybody's not like that. And there's some lawyers that are not like that. So I was willing to give just let's find out what happened. And so when they pressed the charges, they indicted him. And there was some information then about some agreement that he had entered into with the prior DA, who, by the way, was Trump's impeachment lawyer, the tall dude with the glasses that looked like he knew what he was doing. That was the DA at the time, district attorney. So there was some discussion about some agreement that had been entered in between Cosby and the DA that if he testified in a civil trial that Constand, I think is her name, Constand, pursued, that the DA would not pursue criminal charges relative to her sexual assault. And based on that agreement, Cosby testified in the depot. And so then when they used the depot, testified in that trial, they did several depositions, 4 depositions in that civil trial. And so then when they used the deposition in the criminal trial, this go round, I was like, well, that's bizarre, because his attorneys were, the people that were representing him were filed motion to suppress the depot. And that was the explanation that they provided. And I was like, well, why are they using it if there was an agreement? So I thought that was a little weird anyway. But the trial judge said, no, it's admissible. He also admitted some prior bad acts, et cetera, from other alleged victims. So there are 2 trials. There was one trial that resulted in a mistrial. And then they tried him again. And in the first trial, they were allowed to use it. When I say they, I'm saying the prosecution was allowed to use information or a sworn statement of another alleged victim, just to kind of establish that this is something that he does. He gives drugs, he loosens the people up, and he has sex. So trying to establish a plan or a scheme or a plan that he does. It's kind of his modus operandi. Fast forward, they try him again. This time they allow 5 additional women, their statements to come in, and they could their statements talk about their experience again to establish his modus operandi, how he does this. So
Okay.
he gives drugs, etc., has sex. Do you want to say something?
Yes, let me jump in for a second because I want to make sure we keep the proper context. So the deal was struck. My understanding is that you strike the deal to say if you participate and cooperate during this civil proceeding, civilly you're going to be charged with money, right?
There'll be damages that you have to pay.
There's going to be some damages that you're going to have to pay. And if you cooperate, then we'll work this out. This is my verbiage, obviously. We'll work this out such that you pay people off, which is what rich celebrities do. They pay people off, and in exchange for you not saying anything that could be self-incriminating, then you won't get criminal charges brought against you.
No, that's not right. Not in this situation. Okay. So in this situation, what happened was the DA. Constance's mother, she and her mother contacted the district attorney in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, whatever, and said, I think it was Philadelphia, but indicated that they made these allegations. He and his team did an investigation. In the midst of doing the investigation, he indicated, I'm just kind of telling what the order says, that there were some discrepancies in her testimony or in her story. Some things didn't add up, and then some of the behaviors after the alleged rape didn't jive, and he thought it would be very difficult to prosecute, which is in his discretion as a prosecutor. Right. So, but he indicated that even though he didn't think that he would be able to be successful in a criminal prosecution, he still believed that she was entitled to some legal redress, which means you can sue him civilly for damages. Right. She did that, but before that happened, he knew that Cosby would not testify in that civil case willingly, right? You have to subpoena him. And then if he gets there, he has the right under the Fifth Amendment not to incriminate himself. So any questions her attorneys asked him about the incident, he effectively could say, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth, I plead the fifth. And there's nothing anybody could do because you can't force someone to provide testimony incriminating himself. Yep. So what the prior DA said, his name is Castor. What Castor did was he said, okay, look, what I will do is if you told Cosby's attorney, this is my thought. I don't think there's enough to prosecute him in this matter, but I do think that she should be entitled to civil damages. She's already told me she's going to sue. Right. So what I will agree to do and what I will offer is if he agrees to testify, provide his deposition testimony in this civil suit, I will say that the Commonwealth, me as a sovereign of the Commonwealth, will not pursue criminal charges against you for this particular crime. If you lie or if there's any other crimes that you commit or find out more information in the midst of our investigation, this agreement does not include that. And so that was the deal. So but Cosby had to testify and could not plead the fifth. So the agreement was that I won't prosecute you as long as you participate in the civil trial and do not plead the fifth, which means that they ask you questions, you have to tell anything, right?
And so I think here, and again, this is what I'm understanding that he said that was problematic. At the core of this case is whether or not he drugged victims.
Not drug victim, just her, because she's the only to this. The criminal complaint was only as to the situation with her, because all the other people, all of the other alleged victims or accusers, their cases would never have been prosecuted because the statute of limitations had run. Right. So, and hers almost was on the verge of running when they
a few days before prior to. So the question is, did he drug her, causing her to be unconscious and not in a position to consent to having sex? So at issue then is his comments around, have you ever given drugs to a woman with the intent of having intercourse with them? And he said he did. Now I think the devil really is kind of in the details.
I don't know if he said exactly that, but go ahead.
Oh, I think he did. I think they asked him outright, have you ever given drugs to a woman with the intent of having sex with him? And I think the answer was yes, but it did not and I don't think he ever said, and I don't think anybody, and I think that I think it's misinformation going on around that he actually admitted to giving women drugs for the purpose of raping them against their will. And I don't think he's ever admitted to that. However, that said, when that information was disclosed, then the real question becomes, this is the 1970s, right?
No, you're missing. I know. Stop.
Well,
I need you to stop.
We're doing context. Oh no, we're going to do context.
But you can't do context in this because you can't use those prior cases to talk about this one.
Okay.
Because that's not the case. Even though I disagreed with the trial court's decision to allow those prior bad acts exactly for this reason.
Yes.
Just because he did it, just because he allegedly did it in those situations, does not mean that's what happened in this situation.
Okay, but all I'm suggesting is ultimately, regardless of the time period, the context of people doing drugs or people taking quaaludes or people drinking too much alcohol such that their inhibitions are lowered, that wasn't some new thing that happened with this particular victim, right? So I think it sparked an interesting debate, and this is where you and I kind of started going back and forth, because I'm giving you kind of the male locker room barbershop perspective on these, which is I have some of that perspective. But the conversation that was going on in our circles was, okay, well, let's set the stage for what actually happens in reality when someone is wanting to be in your company, when someone they want something from you, whether it's to put them on to some acting job, or maybe they like you, maybe they just dig you as a person, and so once the exchange starts to take place, it's well, would you like some wine? Would you like something to drink? Would you like to whatever? And then one thing leads to another. So that falls way, way, way short of drugging somebody and having them knocked out so that you can rape them. But we had some interesting dialogue around what constitutes consent, and I think that it would behoove us to share with our audience some of the background to some of that conversation.
Right. Well, I just want to be clear. What he admitted to doing, I'm trying to find, because they talk about it in the order of what his testimony was. Mm-hmm. What he admitted to doing, which is what changed my mind. Once I read his parts of the deposition testimony, he admitted to giving drugs offering. He said that the young lady said she had menstrual cramps or something. Something happened. He offered her Benadryl. Benadryl makes you sleepy. And they asked if he had ever given drugs to someone, to your point, mm-hmm. given drugs to someone before having sex, knowing that it would make them loopy or whatever. I don't remember what the terminology was. And he said, yes. In his mind, they were separate. I gave her drugs, but it was not for I gave her the drugs because she said XYZ was happening. Right. I did not give it to her with the intent to have sex with her, is what his contention is.
In that particular instance.
And well, in all of the instances, that's what that's on all the instances what he said. I never gave them drugs with the intention of making them be physically incapable of resisting me in order to have sex. I gave you drugs. We did drugs together. You asked for them, we gave drugs together, and then we had sex. Right. He's not connecting the two.
Okay.
He's not connected to it.
But that's what's happening.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Okay. I'm just sharing with you. I'm not excusing him. I'm not excusing behavior. What I'm sharing with you is that's his argument. His argument is, yes, I gave these women drugs. Mm-hmm. I did that. I admitted that. Yes, we had sex. Mm-hmm. He admits that. I did not give them drugs to make them unable to consent such that we had sex. He did not make that connection. That's his argument. My position is if someone is unconscious because of either being drunk or having taken drugs, they are unable in that moment and in that space to give consent. And then if you have sex with that person, that is a rape because they are not able to consent. They may have consented to the drugs. Mm-hmm. They did not consent to the sex. And so then to have sex with the person after they've taken the drugs and they are unconscious, to have sex with that person is a rape. That was my position, correct. Which is why when I read his depo transcript, and that's what he admitted to doing, he had sex with her. My whole focus was the fact that he had sex with her while she was unconscious. Mm-hmm. She was not able to consent in that moment. And to me, that is a rape. Right. Period.
And you and I agree on that. and at the end of the day, it really kind of gets into the granular discussion that we had around, when is no means no, and when is consent actually consent, and what is implied consent versus explicit consent. And I think we talked about,
there is no implied consent though.
Well,
no, ain't no well nothing.
Here we go.
There's no implied consent.
Okay,
it's either yes. If you don't have a firm yes.
No, that's not true.
That is true.
But that's just inaccurate.
Okay, that's rapey then. I'm just sharing with you.
So here's, and this
it may not be you. It may not be a rape, but that's rapey. Okay. You need consent. Period. No, that's it. You need consent.
So you're suggesting that consent has to be verbal?
Absolutely.
So it's like a contract. So I have to say, would you consent to having sex with me? And you have to, in the affirmative, say yes.
I'm not saying it has to be that.
Because I will tell you that is ridiculous.
Okay, that may be ridiculous, but all y'all gonna get charged for rape.
Well, no.
So if I'm expressing to you,
that's not how
I'm expressing
everyone gets charged
and
for
that's
rape.
fine.
I'm saying people have
the
sex
reason people don't get charged for rape is because people don't report it. When I'm suggesting to you, without I'm not qualifying it. If you don't have consent from a woman, I give you examples. And we had talked about this last night. If I'm drinking and I'm drunk and you're drinking, but you're not as drunk, and you have sex with me, and I may just be kind of loopy and I'm flirting with you, but I'm drunk, and you don't get a firm yes, and she makes it, and then she regrets it afterwards.
Yeah.
She runs down to the cops and say, I was raped because I was not able to give consent. You may be charged with rape. Because there was no firm consent.
No, I get that, but also though, given that, because there's other kinds of physical evidence as well. But given
what physical evidence you talking about?
The physical evidence that accompanies a sexual assault, not just two people having sex. But
if you have sex with the focus of this is the lack of consent. Period. If you put a finger in someone without consent, that is almost arguably a rape. It's arguably a rape. I'm telling you what the definition is.
Okay, all right.
If you penetrate someone with a digit, with your mouth, I don't want to be vulgar, but if you do that, you penetrate someone with all those different things, and you do not have consent to do it, that is arguably rape. And the criminal lawyers, if I'm wrong, feel free to comment. But I'm telling you from a woman's perspective, if I have not given you consent to do any of those things, then that arguably is a rape, and you're real rapey.
So hold on, but before you start categorizing,
you're trying to split hairs. It's not that
I'm not splitting hairs. I'm just saying in reality, people have sex all the time, every day, all day long, all during the day. Some of those people are obviously married couples, right?
And husbands can rape wives.
Husbands can rape wives. Some of those people are been dating for long periods of time, right? And we know that in most of those instances, the fact that they have sex, there's no contract. There's no, oh wait a minute, it's Tuesday night.
I'm not suggesting.
Hold on, wait a minute. No,
you're trying to make it very black. You're trying to make it.
It is black and white.
It is black and white, but you're trying to make it very formal.
That is, and really, that's my whole contention. It is black and white, because if you determine that every single time that a woman decides to not prosecute or make a rape allegation against someone because they don't have like a tape recording of them saying,
that's not what I said.
I will do that.
That's not what I suggested. That's not what I suggested.
Then it is black and white.
That is not what I suggested. What I suggested is you all, and this is the conversation we had last night. One of the problems is that men look at women as objects. They look at women as objects, and you seek ownership.
The physical part.
You seek ownership. Sometimes whatever. You seek ownership over a woman's body. And when a woman tells you, no, I'm not interested, right? Y'all somehow get in y'all way and get in your feelings, and your ego gets real, whatever. I'm not interested in you. I'm not interested in doing this. I can kiss you, but I'm not interested in having sex.
Right.
I could let you do something else to me. I'm not interested in having sex.
Fondling is not
whatever, but I could do that. And on top of that, even if I'm saying, and then because I think the conversation you had last night was, we could be in the bed together. And you're cuddling and you're getting a little too close, and I was like, okay, I'm not really feeling this. And then
no means no.
And no, but then what conversation we had last night was, then the guy makes you feel all guilty, right? Oh God, I can't believe you're gonna do this to me, blah blah blah. And she's already said, I'm not really interested in I don't want to do this. Couple scenarios.
But then she relents.
No, she does not relent.
Hold on. Well,
no, that's not what I said. What I said was
but then
I
when
said
she
he
relents only
I
because
said
she feels guilty.
because she feels pressure is what I said.
Okay.
She feels pressure to engage, even though she's told you multiple times, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
She feels pressure. Sometimes she will take me home, and the dude will say, "No, I'm not taking you home."
That's
okay. That's I know this happened because it's happened to me.
That's power and control.
I know this happened.
Absolutely.
So she feels it's not relenting. She feels pressured into engaging in something that she does not want to engage in
to avoid some negative consequences.
Correct. That's power. That's exactly an assertion of power. And
that's
so,
right.
And so what I'm suggesting to you is, but some people say that that's not. This woman is in a situation, she's already told you multiple times, I don't want to. Even if she relents and she does it in a manner she's not really fully committed to the engagement, I would suggest to you, while it may not be criminally chargeable, you are rapey as hell, and you need to check yourself. I'm serious.
No, and
I am serious because again, women should have ownership over their bodies. And when a woman says, I'm not interested in doing it because of something that happened. Maybe she was interested when you first started.
That's right.
And she first came in the house and she was down, and then something happened in the midst of that conversation.
Which we do a lot. Men screw it up a lot.
And y'all screw it up, and she's like, I'm not interested in doing this anymore. And then you make her feel guilty, and there's pressure added to her. Yeah. It's unfair. It's not right. And I would suggest to you that if you continue to put the pressure on and then she relents because of the pressure, not because she really wants to, that's not truly consent. Now, she may say, okay, fine. There's no real, whatever. She may, okay, fine. No I would consider, right. So yes, possibly legally that may be okay. But I would suggest to you that from a woman's perspective, if I've told you that I'm not interested, then I'm not interested in doing anything. And to put pressure on me is unfair. Mm-hmm. It is not allowing me to have ownership and authority over my body. And you are putting me in a situation where I may really like you, but now you put pressure on me to engage in some behavior that I don't want to engage in. I'm going to do it because I like you. Right. That to me is not truly consent.
Okay. And
people may not agree with that. I'm just speaking. I'm just telling you how I feel. To me, if you're going to engage, it'd be something that both parties want to engage in willingly at that moment. And if one of those parties, it can be a man too, but if one of those parties has articulated that I'm not interested in doing this right now, and I don't want to do it for whatever their reasons are, and you continue to pursue and make the person feel guilty, that arguably it may not be a rape, but it's real rapey. And y'all need to check yourselves. That is my position.
Speaking of real rapey, our conversation actually started kind of, going off into the male psyche too, which I think is it's not justified. It's not in a lot of cases the male psyche working within us is not even something that we're proud of. It just kind of is what it is. But it does get real rapey, if you will, when you start thinking about just how we are socialized in some instances. So women will play quote unquote hard to get. So you ask somebody out and they say no, and you ask them out again and they say no. You ask them out again, they say, well, I kept asking. So I eventually kind of went out with them. And I think what the story we shared was when you talk to other couples a lot of times, and then the story starts with, at first I didn't like him. I was actually interested in his roommate because I thought his roommate was cute, but not him. And so one thing led to another where he just kept asking, he wore you down. And so eventually you became a couple and you related. So I am saying to you that for us, unfortunately, that mentality carries from the time we first start the chase when we're younger to the time we get older and get to a position where we believe it's our not our right, but our duty.
All right.
Some men do believe it's a right, but we believe it's our duty to put work in. When you don't immediately just kind of go, oh yeah, I think you're cute too, let's go have sex. We believe we have an obligation to actually earn it, to put work in, to for lack of a better term, wear you down until you finally relent.
Stalker behavior.
Stalker behavior. But when we are socialized that way and it manifests itself in the behavior that you are talking about, then what I'm suggesting is that's the problem. A lot of men can't. And I don't disagree with that, which is why you have men, when women say, no, I'm not interested, call them at their name and call them all kind of B's and bitches. I would suggest to you also that if what you're saying is that it starts
you are socialized that way, that is something that you all need to check with the younger men to explain to them why that's not okay. Yeah. It's okay for a young girl not to be interested in you. Mm-hmm. Maybe you just look cute. And if you're like 5, I'm not like 5, like in 3rd grade, maybe you stink. I mean, there could be a multitude of reasons.
Like 45.
Right, or maybe 45 and you smell bad. Right. But there are a multitude of reasons why Laura maybe just not interested in she's not interested. She hasn't even identified kind of what liking a boy is yet. So I think it is something that we have to teach our sons early. And I also think that we have to teach our girls to take ownership of your body and let your no be your no and let that be enough. If you said no, that's it. You don't have to qualify it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to do anything. Your no is your no, and that should be enough. And you take ownership over your own body. And we too often, we over-sexualize little girls at a very young age, make them hug guys or make them hug people they don't really want to hug. So Miles, I asked Miles to hug people, but if he don't really want to hug people and Miles will hug with his back, I'm fine with that. That's the way he hugs. He wants to keep ownership over his body. Teach little boys to keep ownership over their bodies as well.
I'm glad you said that. And I want to interject and talk about ownership over your bodies, because I do believe, and I mean this to my core. I talk to young guys all the time, especially relationship advice or whatever other kind of advice, dating advice for that matter. And we don't talk enough to our young men about taking ownership of their bodies. And I will go a step further and say taking ownership of your brand, because you really don't have a whole lot of opportunities to give the impression of to whoever about who you fundamentally are. And so while you think it might be cool to get these notches in your belt, and then you go around the neighborhood, or you go around the school, or you go around the college campus, or you go around town, and you've got all of these various notches in your belt, what you don't understand a lot of times, to your detriment, is that women talk and they know one another, and they see your behavior, and they start making certain judgments about you and your character by that behavior. And if you are managing your brand correctly, what you should be understanding is, I don't just try to sleep with everybody who I can. I'm actually very selective, so that I'm not going to be putting myself out there like that. And that actually makes you more attractive to certain women. So I think it's not necessarily the same as rape or rape culture, but it does have a lot to do with respect for yourself, respect for your body, respect for your brand, and then respect for someone else. Because just like we don't want the chick who's been like all over town, right, and with everybody, we have to understand that mentality actually goes 2 ways. So, and we don't want to get all religified about, you got to save yourself and protect yourself and save yourself for your spouse. But I do believe that with respect to this rape culture, or whatever you want to
listen, some of y'all are out here and are rapey as hell and don't know that you are. I was in, and we're going to end on this. I was in a clubhouse room after I was on Clubhouse after the Supreme Court's Pennsylvania Supreme Court's decision came out, and lots of folks were celebrating, which was very confusing to me, but not really. I will say that I agree with the court's decision. I read it. I agree with it. But I don't think that Bill Cosby did not rape that girl, because you can believe 2 things at the same time. And I will say this. Some of y'all talking about some of the guys I heard on there, it was very disturbing. I pray for young women who are single, because some of these men out there are saying, oh yeah, you've never had sex with a girl that was drunk. You rapey. You may not have raped her because she may have been able to consent, but not fully because she's inebriated. But if you having sex with a drunk woman and you're not really drunk and you sober and she's not fully committed and fully consented to the engagement, you are rapey.
And that's part of that mutual respect as well.
So I'm just sharing. That may offend some people, but that's what it is.
You need to respect her right and her self, her personage, and you also need to have enough respect for yourself to not put yourself in that situation. If somebody's too inebriated to make a determination of whether or not they're going to consent or not consent, then it should be a hard stop, like a hard no, because you're either going to cause somebody else to be embarrassed by your forcing yourself upon them, and you may also have the the unintended consequence of her, kind of waking up in the morning with a headache, going, "Oh my God, what happened? And why are my pants off? And what did you do to me
That's
last
right.
night?" Which all of the, hey, it was all cool and flirty while she was taking shots the night before. All of a sudden, it's not
cool anymore.
It's not cool anymore.
So
my wife is upset.
I'm disappointed in some of y'all, but I think, as I said, I think it's something that is a culture change and a culture shift, and that's y'all responsibility to do that.
Yeah.
But I think we're done. Our hour is up. It has been a wonderful conversation. We should do like a full hour on rape culture, or maybe split up. It's a whole lot to talk about, but
it's a lot.
It's a lot to talk about. But I think it's something that we should definitely have a conversation about.
We will continue to pour into,
and it has to be a trigger warning at the very beginning. But I think it's something that we need to do. But anyway, all right. Well,
we look forward to seeing everybody same time next week on the Soul Purpose Show. I'm Keith, and this is my lovely and talented and smart, by the way. Don't forget the smart part, because not only is she cute and fine and all that, but she's really, really, and I have so much respect for my
brain and my intellect. So you all make sure you follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube, and we will see you all next Saturday.
See ya.